Okay, so this is the second drop-in session for the week 9, right? So yesterday we have discussed through all the concepts for the mass transfer, and those concepts that were given yesterday, it was a fundamental concept, and it's something that is not very complicated, but rather it's given so that we can be on the same page on what kind of the basic concepts and basic formulas that are needed to start tackling the mass transfer problem in this transfer phenomena. And I hope you have gone through the yesterday's concept again. I mean, refresh back again, because obviously what you get in the lecture, you will forget it again. So you get probably about 50%, and then you get about another 20% from repeating again at home, and then another 20% again before your exam. So you get about 90% for those that come to the lecture, 50%, and then you get an extra 20% again and 20%. It will be better if you read before the lecture, so meaning that you get another 20%, so that you get basically 20, then you get about probably not 50 when you come to the lecture, probably let's say about 30 to 40%, and then 20% from repeating again what your lecture has given you, and another 20% again for before you did your exam. Okay, so the first example that we're going to discuss today is the diffusion through a stagnant gas film. Imagine that you have the systems like this. Okay, you imagine that you have a very long glass beaker. It's very long in terms that the length is much more longer compared to the diameter of the glass. Okay, so imagine that in the systems you have a liquid A, and then the liquid A will basically diffuse, and then on the top of this glass, basically the glass container, you have a stream of a gas B, for example. Okay, so this gas B is just flowing up. Since the liquid A evaporates, then of course it becomes a gas B, gas A, right? Basically, that's why in the systems in here we are putting it as a gas stream of A and B. But in actuality, this what we pass through on the top of the glass, on the top of this glass container, is a gas B. Okay, so let's read these things in a bit more detail. So imagine that there is some device that maintains the liquid level at Z equals Z1. So we can assume that for the sake of tackling this problem, that the evaporation is very small, such that the liquid level or the height Z equals Z1 does not change much over time. So if we are talking about this, then we are talking that, of course, in the real situation, then this Z will change when there is an evaporation. But let's say that we are dealing in terms of the minutes. Okay, so if the evaporation rate is very small, so we choose a liquid A that has a very small evaporation rate, then if we are talking about the scale of the minutes, then we can assume that this Z equals Z1 is constant. Okay, so then the right at the liquid gas interface, the gas phase concentration of A expressed as mole fraction is XA1. So at this particular position, when you have an interface between the liquid and the gas, then we take that mole fractions of A is XA1. So that XA1 will be equal to XA in here will be equal to the mole of the A divided by the mole of the A plus mole of B. Okay. So XA1 in here can be defined as the vapor pressure of A divided by the total pressure. Okay. Now we assume that A and B form an ideal gas mixture, and that the solubility of gas B in liquid A is negligible. Okay, and then the stream of a gas mixture AB of concentration XA2 flows slowly past the top of the tube. So what is known from this particular problem is the mole fractions of A at the interface between the gas and the liquid, and also the mole fractions of A at the top of your gas container, of the glass container in here. Okay, So the entire system is also kept at the constant temperature and pressure. So it means the system is isothermal and isobaric. So now, when we start with these particular systems, what we are going to use in here is always the combined momentum flux that we defined yesterday. Okay, so where do we define that thing? So we define that thing in the equations that I give in yesterday's slide, that I can go back again in here. Okay, so that will be these equations in here. Okay, these equations in here is the MAZ is equal minus C dAB del XA over del Z. So I need to check again, so I don't really know which one is actually the one that they refer to. I think it's supposed to be this one. Okay, it's supposed to be the 1782, and then you are talking about this equation 17.8-4. So in essence, what we are doing in here is these equations. This one is basically for the molecular momentum flux contribution. Okay. So let me see, if we are using this one, then the one that we're gonna use is in here is not being described, but I described this in here. So the initial point of all the equations that you're gonna use is these equations in here. Okay, and AZ is equal minus C dAB del XA over del Z plus XA and AZ plus NBZ. The first term in this equation refers to the molecular contributions of the from A. Okay, so this one is a molecular division. The second one is a convective term. Convective term is caused by the bulk motion of the fluid. So that's why you have in here in terms of the A and then and B. Now, the thing that creates a complications in here is that because in order for you to get an explicit functions of NAZ, you need to be able to know the NBZ first. So this creates a complications. But in every problem that are given that we go through later on, we can have some assumptions that can relate this NBZ to NAZ, or in some cases like in here, we have stated that the solubility of the gas B in liquid A is negligible. And then that means that at steady state there is a net motion of A away from the interface and the species B becomes stationary. Therefore, the molar flux of A is given by setting NBZ is equal to 0. Now you need to move this XA and AZ into the left hand side. Okay, and if we do this kind of mathematical manipulations, we will be able to get expressions of NAZ, an explicit expression of NAZ in terms of the XA and the XA. Okay, now once we get these things in here, this is the first thing that is important. What you need to do is you need to get an explicit expressions of the NAZ in terms of the XA. Once you get these things, then what you can do is you go into your system again and then make your shell element. Define where your shell elements is. You take a thickness of delta Z in there, and then you define that there is an input and then there is an output. Now, since we don't have the productions or consumptions of the mass A by any reactions, that means that this term will be 0, right? So what we have in here is basically just a simple term in here. And then if we divide by the S multiplied by the delta Z, so we divide by the volume, what we will have is that as we take the limit approaching 0, we know that our molar flux of A is constant. Okay, so meaning that the molar flux of your A from this point to the top point will be constant. There is no change in terms of the molar flux. But what we want in here is an expressions of the mole fractions of the XA as a functions of the Z, because that will vary over the height of the tube from the interface of the gas to liquid with until the top of the glass container. So now we substitute this expression in here into here, okay, and then we can we can basically take out all the constants from the derivative term, and we know that for ideal gas, P is equal C multiplied by RT. Okay, so we know also that the diffusivity can be constant, can be taken out because we are operating at the constant temperature and the pressure. So when we take out these things, then only these things that we need to deal with. And once we integrate this, then we know that this particular term is equal to constant, right? Then up from here, if we want to solve, then we need to slow them systematically and slowly using a calculus base. So in here, I took that y is equal 1 minus xa. And then if we put in, we substitute everything in, we can integrate in here. Okay. Then we stop in here. We get the equal C1 Z plus C2. Now, in order for me to make my life easy, then I will assume that C1 is equal minus ln K1, because a minus ln of a constant will be equal to a constant. If I do that kind of things, and by using all the operations of the algorithm of the logarithm natural, I can find that 1 minus xa is equal K1Z multiplied by K2. Then you will ask me, sir, is that the only way that you need to do these things? Should I equalize minus ln K? How can I know that C1 will be equal to the minus ln K1? It's basically, I just want to imitate the style that they use in the left-hand form to come up with the final simplified form. But that will not be the only way to solve this particular equation. The other way that you can do is this one, the one that I put in the red, writing in here. Okay, so you can, for example, follow this derivation. Okay, if you follow these derivations, then you will basically get the same thing as well in here. Okay, that 1 minus xa is equal to k1z multiplied k1 raised to z multiplied by k2. So in engineering and in science, I think we only have an exact answer, but there are many ways to get the exact answer. Okay, once we get these things, then we know that we need two boundary conditions to get the functions of the mole fractions. Okay, so let's just substitute this BC1 and BC2. We substitute this accordingly. Then we know that the K2 is equal to this term in here, and then we can find K1. After we find K1, we can also substitute it back into these equations in here, and then we can find K2. The process looks a little bit more complicated, but I'm very sure that if you do these things slowly, you will be able to get this. And then what is important is for you to notice that each term is to be associated with the order of this term, of each term is to be associated with the order of the same term in here. And then if you do it very nicely, then you will get these final solutions in here. Okay, so that's how I do it, and it may not be the only way that you do that thing. Now, even though the molar flux of the Na is constant, we want to know whether the slope of this XA1 and of this XA and XB is constant over this Z. Okay, so what we check is that what about the dXA over dZ? So dXA over dZ in here is basically the slope at this particular position. It can be at any slope, so the slope will be different at different position of the Z. And you can get back your slope in here is basically, if you go back to this equation, you know that this dXA over dZ will be equal to the C1 multiplied by 1 minus XA. And if you follow this, hi, good afternoon, Stephanie. If you follow the C1, you know that the C1 has been equalized to minus 1 K1. So if we just follow what we did in here, we continue again, then we know that our dXA over dZ in here is equal to this particular expression. And as you know that the dXA over dZ in here will be different for a different Z in here, because because of the z term that appears in the order for this x1 minus xa2 divided by 1 minus xa1. So in essence, what we know is that dxa over dz is a function of z. That's why when I go and I look into the Birch book, and then with the way that they are plotting this profile, concentration profile for the molar flux, the mole fraction profile of this A and B, they are not forming a line, but it's a curve, because the slope will be different at different position of Z. Okay, so of course in the beginning when you try to solve this problem, you will not get the profile, but only after you make all the assumptions and you are able to come up with the profile, then you cross check it again. Is it really true or not? Okay, so that is the thing that is important. So even the flux in here is constant. Okay, because if you integrate this one, then it will be clear that your NAZ will be equal to a constant, right? But your slope of the molar fraction at different Z position will be different. Now, this is what I'm giving in here. These are the things that are important. Okay, so next, what we can find is after we find the mole fractions profile, then what we can find is average concentration of B in the region between Z1 and Z2. So we will follow these derivations in here, where we basically integrate all over the Z divided by the total distance. Okay, so this one is basically XB divided by XB1 can be defined in terms of the XA, because then we know that basically the XA plus XB should be equal to 1. Right, so that's the thing that we need to understand in here. Okay. Now we put in this one, XB divided by XB1 is basically equal to the left-hand side in here. So what we are putting in the right-hand side in here is basically just the right-hand side of these equations in here. Okay, and then if I want to simplify that thing further, then I can use these substitutions, and then when it start crossing with each other, then I can find that basically this XB average will be equal to the XB2 minus XB1 divided by ln XB2 divided by XB1. Therefore, the XB average that we get from here is equal to the logarithmic mean of the terminal concentrations. Why it is logarithmic mean? Because you divide this XB2 minus XB1 divided by the logarithmic of the XB2 over XB1. So the reason why in mass transfer we come up with a lot of logarithmic natural term is because of this, because we start from this particular combined molar flux term in here. Okay, the first term in here contains the molecular contributions, the second term in here containing the convective contribution. So we need an assumption to relate the B to A in order for us to get an explicit expression of the NAZ with respect to XA. Okay, so this is basically what is the complicating factor for the mass transport. And the notes that I give in here is basically just to show what are the integral of the dx. Okay, in here. So you may want to recheck this again and then confirm whether what I did in here is correct or not. Now, the other quantity that we can find in here is the rate of the mass transfer at the liquid-gas interface. So we want to find the rate of the mass transfer at this particular position. So what is that thing? So that thing will be equal to the NAZ at Z equal Z1. So we go back again in here. Now we already have the expressions for that thing, that term in here. So what we need to do is essentially we just need to differentiate this XB with respect to Z. Right? That is basically what we are using in here, these particular things in here. So we are using this this property of the integrations and the derivations in here. Okay, if we integrate those things, then we can find that our NAZ at Z equal 1 will be equal to this. And so the NAZ at Z equal 1 will be equal to this term in here. Okay, so then these equations have been used for experimental determination of the gas diffusivities and find use in the film models of mass transfer. So one of the very interesting model in chemical engineering that has been used a lot especially in the diffusion problem is this called the so-called film models of mass transfer. Imagine that you have two regions of the film where there is a thin region of the films where you have a slowly moving gas film, and then you have another one is basically the main full stream and turbulent flow. So these are two different regions. You have one film and another one is just a region. So within the slowly moving gas films, you have a concentration profile that varies from this particular interface to this particular film. Okay, whereas in this particular turbulent region in here, there is no variations in terms of the mole fraction. Okay, so that is what implied by this shape transition from a stagnant film to a well-mixed fluid. Okay, this model is, although this is physically unrealistic, but this is a good picture or basically a good framework for us to tackle when we have a diffusion problem. Okay, it has been used a lot. If you want to see it in here, then the explanation is given in this book again in here. Okay, the explanation is given in this book. So it's the one that is given in this book. So I think what I need to cover in here is the fact that if you only see that this one is a constant, and AZ is constant, it's proven that NAZ is constant. But if you want to cross-check it again, then you just substitute what is dXA over dZ into that particular NXA. So we know that NAZ is actually having a final functions of expression of this CdAb Z2 minus Z1 divided by Z2 minus Z1 ln 1 minus XA1 divided by 1 minus XA1. So this one is XA2. So you can see that there is no Z variable that comes or appear in this particular equation. So meaning that this NAZ is not a function of Z. Okay. So it's very important that sometimes you cross-check back again your equations to make sure that what you get is correct. And then if you go into the BERT book in here, okay, we can also express these particular equations that we get in here. Okay, so this is 18 to 15 is basically this particular equations in here. Okay, this particular equations in here. So we can expand this term in here in terms of the Taylor series. Okay, if we do expand that one in the terms of the Taylor series slowly, so what I do in here is basically I do a little bit of mathematical manipulations in here. Okay, so basically I can convert that this particular term in here, especially this XB ln is equal to this particular term in here, such that I can basically just care more about this term 1 over XB ln in here, which is equal to this particular term in here. And then when I took this ln 1 minus XA1 minus ln 1 minus XA1, and these two terms I replace it with the Taylor series expansion, okay, which is expressed by these terms in here, then this term in here will be equal to this term in here. As a result, these equations in here can be expressed in terms of these equations in here. So in essence, if you go back to your transfer phenomena problem, what this particular term in here is equal to your equations 1801 in here. Okay, so it's equal to this particular term in here, because as you can see in that particular term, we have the CdAb XA1 minus XA2 divided by Z2 minus Z1. So this particular term in here is equal to the XA1 minus XA2, whereas this term in the denominator in here is equal to the Z2 minus Z1. But of course, this term will be neglected. Okay, so when this term is neglected, then we will have this particular term. So meaning that we neglected the contributions from the convective term in our things in here. So if you manage to get this, and then you get you express it in terms of these things, then this the second term, the third term, the fourth term, and the subsequent term, the second, the third, and the fourth is basically acting as a correction term for your molecular flux. Okay, so that's basically what is implied by the Bird book in here. Okay, so these equations in here can also be expressed in terms of this particular term for special cases. Okay, I know that this sounds a bit complicated, but don't worry too much about this anyway. It's something that I just explained for the sake of making a complete derivations of this example. Okay, now you will ask me, Jaka, why did I need to deal with, why did I need to care about these equations, or why did I need to care about this particular equation? What are the use of those equations in real life as a chemical engineer? I can't find anything. I mean, this is simply just a mathematical term. I don't need to learn all these things just to be a chemical engineer. Then that brings us to the next problem that I will solve in here for you, so that these things can be utilized in the real situation. Now, in the beginning, we know that we already have the expressions for the molar flux of A at Z equals Z1, right? So as a chemical engineer, we can also devise another scenario where we have a diffusion with a moving interface. So instead of maintaining the liquid-gas interface at a constant H, we can consider that the liquid level may vary. So in case you have an evaporation, then of course your liquid A will evaporate. I mean, will diminish with time. Okay. Imagine at one side where you have this glass container with the liquid A at time t equals 0, and then at another time where the T has become very large, such that a significant amount of the liquid has been evaporated, such that your Z1 will go down. Okay, I can define that my original distance from the point of the Z2 to Z1 at time equals 0 is equal to H, and then I can also define that the distance between the Z1 at t equals 0 to Z1 at t is equal to the H. Okay, and all these things are made just to support my derivation. So you don't really worry too much about why I put it in such a way. So I will explain it later on. Okay. So if the liquid retreats, meaning the liquid level diminishes very slowly, then we can use a method called the quasi-steady state method. Okay, a quasi-steady state method is working for transient systems where the change in the transient variable is small with respect to time. Now, we can make a mass balance in here. Then we say that the molar rate of evaporation of A from the liquid phase is equal to the rate at which moles of A enter the gas phase through the interfacial area S. Okay, so let's equalize the change with respect to the liquid level. Okay, so this one we multiply the surface, we multiply this. So this term is in the balance what we call an accumulation term. Okay, so the reductions in the accumulation term will be equal to the mass transfer that are going out basically from that particular liquid gas interface. Okay, that's why we are putting a minus in here. Okay, So this minus S multiplied by the density of the gas A divided by the molecular weight of A, and multiplied by the change in terms of the Z1 with respect to T should be equal to this terms in here. So this terms in here is essentially what we get from these particular equations. Okay. I hope everybody can follow up to this stage. Am I being lost by explaining myself too much? Daniel, Gladys, Elvin, Jonathan, Saif, Stephanie, would you be able to follow me up to this stage? Are you sure? Okay. I did not really give this particular problem in your canvas because I don't want to make it complex. Okay. I just want to keep your mass transport to what it is that you have. Okay. This is an additional derivation that I did as a part of my own interest. Okay. You need to know that this is basically equal to this NAZ molar flux multiplied by the surface area. So that this surface area will be cancelled with each other. But in order for you to know whether this is correct or not, then you always have to check the units again. So the units will be in terms of the mole per second on the left hand side, and then the unit will be in terms of the mole per second on the right hand side. Okay. So if everything is like this, then what we can do is we will be able to express this whole equations in terms of these equations in here. Now, by looking at this particular diagram in here, we know that the Z2 minus Z1 will be equal to the H plus H as a function of T. Note that this H in here is a constant, but because this is the initial distance between Z2 with Z1 at time equals 0. But your H will change with time. Okay, so then you can express this Z2 minus Z1 in terms of the H plus H as a function of T. The reason that I put in a bracket of the T in here is to make it clear which variable has a dependence on the time. So if I differentiate with respect to time, then this will become dz1 over dt, and then the h with respect to the dt. So in essence, the derivative of z1 will be equal to the derivative, the negative derivative of the z1 will be equal to the derivative of the h. Okay, so if I continue this, then I substitute these things inside into that, and then I can get these terms in here. Okay, and then now I want to abbreviate these terms, these whole variables. I abbreviate this is by half CT. So basically all this variable will be equal to the half C. And you will ask me, why is it half C? Because it's just for the sake of making it an easy mathematical form, as you will see later on. If we integrate this with and we make all this in terms of the half C, then you will have this term in here. Okay, then I can do the thing that is most important thing in here is that we don't have to use initial conditions, but rather we can integrate that at h equals 0. So h is equals 0 at time t equals 0, right? And then it will become h at time equal t. So we are just simply matching the initial conditions with the later conditions in here. And then once we get these things, what we need to do is we need to do a mathematical manipulation such that we will get an h as an explicit functions of the time. That's why we go and we add in here an additional term of the h squares on the left hand side in order for it to make it into this particular term. Okay, and then if we do these things correctly, everything that we know, that we will be able to recover a final expression where we have the h in terms of the h and then the t. So the variables that will vary, that will be probed with in our experiments will be the h and then also the time, because this h will be we can figure out from the experimental setup. We find that that will be the head in the beginning before we start flowing any gas on top of this glass container. Okay, then we will come up with a very simple equations that relates the diminishing in terms of your head of the liquid with respect to time. And this is where you get all the diffusivities for your gas, diffusivities of the liquid in the gas, diffusivities of liquid A in gas B, for all the values that I showed you yesterday in the Burke's book, basically. Okay, then this equations is what people has been using to obtain the diffusivities, the binary diffusivities from the measurement of the liquid level as a function of time. So now you know that your derivations of the transfer phenomena is not in vain, meaning that you really get something out of your out of all these hard works that you do with your mathematical terms. And that's where the power of the chemical engineering mathematics come in, because you can use the experimental setup and all the assumptions that you do, even your experimental setup, given in here, to design for an experiment to give you a value for something that you will not be able to see in real life. So for example, a mechanical engineer, they can see the machine, but chemical engineer, they cannot really see the gas. Can you see the gas? Nobody can see the gas, right? But and then nobody can really see the process of the mass transfer. Basically, it's not like a civil engineer. You have the bar, you put it in, and then you can measure the mechanical strength. But this is not. So that's why chemical engineer is a bit weird, because we can calculate something that we really cannot see in reality ourselves. Okay, so I will conclude my example today in here, and I think I will not go into the mathematical derivations in detail, but the most important thing is that you know what I'm trying to say, and then the picture is what is more important. It's not just the mathematical. The mathematical can come up later on, but the way that you phrase the physical, you make it the mathematical fits within your systems, and how you do it like this, how do you do it like that, and then the whole meaning of the mass transfer, the whole meaning of the heat transfer, and the whole meaning of the momentum transport is what is important. Okay, so any questions from you guys? Daniel, Gladys, Alvin, Jonathan, Saif, Stephen. Only 6 people show up today. Nobody? Any questions? Do you guys really get what I'm telling you just now? No, not really. I did not give you this division with the moving interface in the canvas, okay, guys? Because if I keep on giving you everything, then it's not good for you. I'm teaching transport, but I also, out of curiosity, I do all this derivation myself, and I don't necessarily give this as a part of the lecture, but rather I do this as a part of my own curiosity. So you can see in here, for example, they don't really explain in detail, right? They just basically just get several steps in here. They give the main picture of how they set up this thing, but all the thing in here you have to basically derive it yourself, and you have to use a logic to derive those things. That's how I was trained before when I went to Queensland. Okay, so my Prof do only show a little bit and then give what I give you, basically more on the useful of, more on the significance, or more on the applications of the equations rather than the derivation itself, because the derivations you can do, I'm sure you can do, but more important thing is where you have a picture. So later on when you graduate, then you can tell people that I passed the subject and what is the use of the subject. That is much more important than the mathematical derivation itself. Okay, so if there is no questions, then I will just stop the recording here.